On the 18th of April, 2021, football fans around the world woke up to a nightmare. 12 of Europe's biggest clubs had secretly agreed to create a brand new competition, one designed to replace the Champions League and completely change football forever. There would be no real qualification, no relegation, and no risk involved at all. Just Europe's richest clubs locked together permanently, protected from failure and guaranteed billions. To many fans, it felt like football was being stolen right in front of them. Within hours, protests erupted outside stadiums. Club legends publicly attacked the idea. Governments got involved. UEFA threatened bans. Players were dragged into the chaos. Social media exploded with outrage. Then, just 48 hours later, the entire project collapsed. So how did some of the biggest clubs in world football create the biggest scandal in modern football history? And why are many people convinced the Super League could still return one day? Long before the public ever heard the words European Super League, the idea had already been quietly growing behind closed doors. For years, Europe's elite clubs had become increasingly frustrated with UEFA and the Champions League system. The biggest clubs believed they were generating the majority of football's global attention, but weren't receiving enough of the money. At the center of it all was Real Madrid president Florentino Perez. Perez believed football had a serious problem. Young fans were losing interest. Revenues were slowing down, clubs were drowning in debt, and according to him, the biggest teams needed to play each other more often in order to keep football alive. But many people believed the real motivation was much simpler: money. The COVID-19 pandemic had affected football financially in a more damaging way than anyone expected. Stadiums were empty. Matchday revenue disappeared overnight. Some clubs were losing millions every single week. Barcelona were in financial chaos. Real Madrid were carrying a huge debt from stadium redevelopment. Juventus were struggling financially. Even Premier League clubs were beginning to feel pressure despite massive TV deals. Behind the scenes, discussions intensified. Secret meetings reportedly took place for years between Europe's wealthiest clubs and investment banks. Plans were drawn up, financial models were prepared, and lawyers became involved. Then came the bombshell. On April 18th, 2021, 12 clubs officially announced the creation of the European Super League, and football changed instantly. The clubs involved were some of the biggest names in football history: Manchester United, Liverpool, Chelsea, Manchester City, Arsenal, Tottenham, Real Madrid, Barcelona, Atletico Madrid, Juventus, Inter Milan, and AC Milan. Together, they plan to create a new midweek competition that would rival and potentially replace the Champions League entirely. But this wasn't just another tournament. This was a completely different model of football. The founding clubs would have permanent places in the competition regardless of performance. No qualification, no relegation, and no consequences. Even if a team finished 10th in their domestic league, they would still remain in the Super League because they were founding members. To football fans across Europe, this was completely against the spirit of the sport. Football had always been built on merit. You earn your place, you qualify, you fight your way to the top. But the Super League would remove that risk entirely. And financially, the rewards were enormous. JP Morgan reportedly agreed to fund the competition with billions of pounds. Founding clubs were expected to receive massive guaranteed payments immediately. For some clubs, it was effectively financial protection against failure. And that's why many fans believed this had nothing to do with improving football. It was about protecting the elite. Critics immediately compared it to American franchise sports, where teams cannot be relegated regardless of how badly they perform. But European football has never worked like that, and many fans believe the Super League threatened the very identity of the sport itself. As controversial as the Super League was, the clubs did have reasons for pursuing it. Modern football has become unbelievably expensive. Transfer fees exploded, player wages skyrocketed, agents demanded huge commissions, and clubs were under constant pressure to keep spending just to stay competitive. At the same time, qualification for the Champions League had become more important than ever financially. Missing out on the top four could cost clubs hundreds of millions over multiple seasons. That pressure created huge instability. One bad season could completely change a club financially. The Super League would remove that uncertainty forever. Instead of depending on qualification, the elite clubs would guarantee themselves annual revenue every single season. From a business perspective, it made perfect sense. But football isn't just a business, and that's where the problem began. Fans saw the Super League as pure greed. Many supporters believed clubs were abandoning the entire pyramid structure that made football special in the first place. Smaller clubs feared they would become irrelevant. Domestic leagues feared financial collapse. UEFA feared losing control of European football entirely. And then came the backlash. The reaction was immediate and brutal. Football fans across Europe united against the Super League almost instantly. Usually rival supporters hate each other, but But this was different. Manchester United fans agreed with Liverpool fans. Chelsea fans stood beside Arsenal fans. And for once, football supporters were fighting the same enemy. Across social media, outrage spread like wildfire. Former players attacked the idea publicly, and one moment became especially iconic. On live television, Gary Neville launched into an emotional rant attacking the clubs involved, calling the project a criminal act against football fans. The pressure kept growing. UEFA threatened punishments. FIFA condemned the project. Even the British government publicly opposed the Super League. Suddenly, the clubs realized something terrifying. This wasn't just criticism, this was rebellion. Fans weren't willing to accept it, and the clubs had badly underestimated how emotional football culture really is. Because unlike many businesses, football clubs are deeply connected to identity, history, and community. Fans felt betrayed, and the situation was quickly spiraling out of control. Then, the panic began. Less than 48 hours after the announcement, cracks started appearing everywhere. Reports emerged that several English clubs were already looking for ways out. Chelsea were among the first to pull away. Manchester City followed soon after. And once the English clubs started leaving, the entire project began collapsing like dominoes. One by one, clubs withdrew from the competition. Liverpool apologized publicly. Arsenal released statements admitting they had made a mistake. Inter Milan withdrew. The project was dying in real time. In just 2 days, the entire project had gone from football's future to complete humiliation, and fans celebrated like they had won a trophy. Now here's the most important part of this story. The Super League failed, but the problems that created it never disappeared. The financial gap between elite clubs and everyone else is still growing. Transfer spending keeps increasing, wages keep rising, and Europe's biggest clubs still want more control over money and broadcasting revenue. In fact, many people believe UEFA's recent Champions League changes were partly designed to stop another Super League attempt from happening again. Because the truth is, the clubs pushing for the Super League were never completely wrong about football's financial direction. They were just wrong about how they tried to fix it. Football today is becoming more commercial every single year, and if revenues continue becoming the most important thing in the sport, another version of the Super League could absolutely return one day, maybe under a different name, maybe with a slightly different format. But the tension between tradition and money in football is far from over. For 48 hours in 2021, football felt completely broken. Fans believed the sport they loved was being transformed into a closed business designed only for the richest clubs. And in the end, it was the fans themselves who stopped it. Not UEFA, not FIFA, the supporters. But the bigger battle never really ended, because modern football is still moving toward bigger money, bigger owners, and bigger financial power. And as long as that continues, the idea behind the Super League will probably never fully disappear. So the real question is this: did fans save football forever, or did they only delay the inevitable?